on secularism already, but we haven't talked about Islam. So you kind of need to let your brain relax for a minute, and we need to talk about Islam. So it takes it back a little bit. That's the wonkiness of this year, and you will find that a lot of times your homework will be a little bit ahead, but it will even out. It's hard, it's just how it is, and you guys roll with it, so that's cool. Okay, you should have 2 sheets of yellow pages. We're gonna do notes, and we're gonna do a picture. Okay, so Islam, the underlined parts are for you guys to write in. Some of them will be phrases, some of them will just be words. But at the very foundational stage, Islam is called a theistic worldview. What that means is that it's a God-believing worldview. They have a God. His name is Allah. And I'm going to crucify these words. I don't mean to, but all I know is English. And just listening to the lady on the video last week, I'm like, oh, I could listen to you talk all the time. The people in the East, Europeans, they accent different things, and Iowans usually ruin them. So I'm probably not saying Allah correctly, and it is not out of disrespect. It's just I'm from Iowa. Okay, so Islam, basically, it's a theistic worldview, meaning it has a God. The God is Allah. It is centered on the life of the Prophet Muhammad. That means evidence for Allah or God is seen through Muhammad. This is their general revelation. Where we talk about general revelation is through creation, their general revelation is through the Prophet Muhammad. Okay? And also Islam is understood through sacred writings. This includes the Quran, the Hadith, and the Sunnah. These are the main 3 writings, and the Hadith is called Hadith literature, and there are volumes of it. So knowing Allah or God is made possible through these writings. This is their, what we would call special revelation, where our special revelation comes through the scriptures. These are their scriptures. And what you will find out about Allah is he is all about the rules. It's just do this, don't do that. Okay? Islam itself means submission. That's just stating the meaning of the word. But it follows through. Islam is all about changing the outside to change the inside. So it's more about what you do than what you think. It's about how you act, not about your heart. And Islam says your actions are more important than your beliefs. So you can have a heart full of hatred, but if you can control it and act loving, it is still considered a good deed, okay? Because it's about how you act, all right? Ready to go on? Okay. Now, how do they live? They live, okay, so 5 pillars should be 6. That's my mistake, okay? 5 pillars should be 6. They live by 6 pillars. These are the required behaviors that all Muslims do, and they do them every day. So the first one is called the confession or the creed. I don't care if you want to write both words, you are more than welcome to. If you just want to write one, that's fine. It's either but they mean the same thing, and it's known as the Shahada. Once again, I'm going to say it wrong. So the confession or the creed is to say there is no God but Allah and Muhammad is his prophet. If you say this and believe it with all of your heart, you are considered a Muslim. Okay? Also, prayer. Prayer is known as salat in Iowa language, which I'm sure that's not how they say that. They pray 5 times a day. They have to face toward Mecca. Now, Mecca is modern day Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia, I can't even say that one. I can't even say the names of wines. I'm never going to make it. Anyway, they have to pray 5 times a day. They have to bow, and usually their prayer is not, oh, bless grandma and grandpa and mom and dad. Their prayer is, there is no God but Allah, and Muhammad is his prophet. It's just over and over and over again. That's how they pray, okay? So the confession and the creed and the prayer are highly related, okay? Then there's a fast. Another required behavior that they have is the fast of Ramadan. I'm not even going to try and say that word, but it's SAWM. This is a month-long fast. We hear about it here in the United States. They tell us when Ramadan starts. The fast happens only during daylight hours, so they restrict themselves during daylight hours. They don't drink wine anyway, but, well, fast. You don't eat, you don't drink. Okay, duh. You also, if you're married, you don't pretend you're married, okay, during daylight hours. But once the sun goes down, it's party time, because you have made it through that time interval, and you can just go nutty bonkers the whole night as long as it's dark. And then when the sun comes up again, they continue the fast. I would think that a lot of them are probably like so tired. The fasting is, if you party all night, you're just gonna be tired in the morning, okay? And it's gonna play out. But anyway, so that's how they do it. You will find some Muslims that are probably way more strict. Like, if I'm gonna fast, I'm going to be very judicious about it and not have a party at night. But you might be scarce to find them. Okay, then alms. This is just charity, giving to the poor and needy. Every Muslim has to give at least 2.5%. Now, when we say poor and needy, their alms go only to Muslims. That's it. They don't go to the Red Cross. They don't go anywhere else. It goes all to Muslim charities. Okay? The 5th required behavior is called a pilgrimage to Mecca. Once again, not even going to try and say it. This is a once-in-a-lifetime travel to go to Mecca, which is just Saudi Arabia, because the Kaaba that the lady talked about, it's still there. That's where they go. It has been cleansed and rededicated to Muhammad. So Muslims go there, and if you look it up online, you'll see this black box, because it's still a black box, and it will be surrounded by all these people dressed in white. And it is just amazing. And it's actually down, it's not up on a hill, it's kind of down.
Like in the thing, it was like there's like stairs kind of like all coming down, like in like a bowl type of thing.
Yeah. So if you see a dark-skinned person and you think, ooh, maybe from that area, like Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and they're dressed in complete white, like it will be the long shirt and the pants. Shoes are kind of optional, but they usually wear sandals. They are on their way to Mecca, because that denotes it. You have to do this at least once before you die, okay? And then the last required behavior is known as jihad. We're going to save this for later because it requires a little discussion later on in your notes, okay? So this is how they live. These are the things that they have to do. And it should look familiar. There's confession, there's prayer, there's a fast, there's charity. The traveling and jihad get a little wonky, but we're like, huh, that sounds very similar. Okay, okay, well, I'll come back to the first page for you girls in just a minute. Okay, so core doctrines. What do they believe? What do they have to believe? They're really only 6. They have to believe in the unity of God. This is a Unitarian belief. This is not God as Trinity. This is one God as one person. His name is Allah. He doesn't have a son. He's not a Father, Son, Spirit. He is just one God as one person. Okay? They must believe in angels. What the angels do is they record your good deeds and your bad deeds. They are always recording your good deeds and your bad deeds. Yes, go right ahead. Okay. And it will become important on the day of judgment for those angels to show up. So if you think of the Emperor's New Groove, and you go to Kronk, and he has little two angels on his shoulder, okay, you can kind of think that. They're just always there, and they are always recording your deeds. Okay, then you must believe in God's prophets. Now, this includes Adam, David, Moses, Jesus, and there's a total of 25 prophets from the Bible that they include as prophets, but Muhammad trumps them all. So they are well versed in the first 5 books of the Bible and in our Bible. But Muhammad trumps, overpowers whatever the Bible says. So Muhammad is their main guy. He is more important than Jesus, more important than Moses, more important than David and Adam, but those were also prophets. Okay? It gets a little wonky. I didn't make it up, so. Okay, then you believe in God's books. And when you see God's books, so we're talking about Allah here, okay? Not Jehovah, okay? So I probably should have said Allah, I didn't. Believe in God's books. This is the Quran. It also, Quran trumps the Quran, the Sunnah, and the Hadith. Trump the Torah, the Psalms, and the Gospels, but they are well-versed. They are well-versed in the Torah, the Psalms, and the Gospels if they read and if they have studied. But it is said to include them. But once again, just like Muhammad is bolded and the Quran and the Sunnah and the Hadith are bolded, that's because they overpower, and if there is some discrepancy, then the Quran is believed over the Gospels. And then you must believe in the final judgment where your deeds are weighed. This is where your angels come in. And that's really how you get into heaven or not. Your good deeds must outweigh your bad deeds. Which sounds like, okay, I get that. But then they must believe in divine destiny. Now this sounds kind of far outish, but everything that happens is a divine sovereign decision. So, this should sound somewhat familiar to us. Like, we believe that God, Jehovah, Yahweh, He's in control of everything. He started time. He's the one who says. They believe that everything that happens is because of Allah. All right? So, we would just say, okay, that means that Allah is omnipresent, omniscient, and omnipotent. And on the surface, it's yes, He is. But He doesn't really want to interact with His people. He wanted to interact with Muhammad. So, divine destiny, day of judgment, let's put them together. On the day of judgment, your deeds are weighed. In order to set foot into heaven, you have to have more good deeds than bad deeds. But you will stop at the door of heaven because Allah will stand there, and He can at that moment say, no, you're not coming in which case you are thrown into hell. They don't talk a lot about hell, but they believe in judgment, so if you're not going to heaven, you're going somewhere else, okay? So Allah has the final say. So when you see number 6, believe in divine destiny, think of it more like not a line judge for a volleyball game where, all you say is it's in or it's out. But think of it as an old-timey king who can just do whatever he wants based on how he feels that day. Okay? So, do you kind of get the idea of this feeling of submission? Like, it's a very weighty thing. Like, I can do all the right things and I still might not get into heaven. And we haven't even talked about jihad. But anyway, let us go in. Let's talk about Muhammad himself. You will see Muhammad spelled with an ED and AD, they're all him. We're just gonna go with AD. I remember that because of the mad part. That just helps me remember something about him. Okay, so he was born in Mecca. This is Saudi Arabia, about AD 570. So this is after the death of Christ. He lived among polytheism and animism and death. So polytheism just means many gods. Animism means they worshipped animals. Remember the Kaaba with the 360 deities. And we know from the video that he lost his mom and his dad died, then his uncle died. So he just went, he didn't really have a home, okay? He was kind of orphaned. And that affects a person. He became a merchant, so he sold things and he traveled. He encountered lots of people, including Jews and Christians, in his travels. He would have, because it is 570 years after the death of Christ. This is when the church would have not been popular, but there would have been churches, and churches were usually in towns that did a lot of merchandising, because that's where the people are, and Christians would have churches where there were Christians. So he would have heard it, and he would have run into them, and he would have been influenced by them, or at least known about them and gone, oh, that's new and different, or he just would have been touched by it. There was something else I was going to say. I can't remember. But if you think about it, they also, Muslims, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, and Numbers, I didn't count right. The Torah, the first 5 books, that's part of their literature that they read and they understand. Okay. From ages 40 to 59. So these are all the things that happened during this time. He, and the video said, that's what it was. In the Kaaba, where there's 360 deities, Christians who traveled there would actually bring representations of baby Jesus and Mary, and they would put them in the Kaaba. Okay, so that was also there. So he was aware.
Is it 40 to 59 or is it 40 to 62?
It can be both, because I'm going to get to 62, but if you want to change it 40 to 59, because at 62 he dies. Okay, that's the big thing, and it should be lower down on your paper. But during 40 to 59, he has these disturbing dreams and visions where he's in the cave, and he thinks, oh, demons are trying to attack me, or I'm being influenced by demons. His wife at that time suggests, well, maybe God is trying to speak to you. After that, he claims that the angel Gabriel, which the lady on the video said it much more beautifully, Jabril, he claims the angel Gabriel visited him and commissions him as a prophet and says, you need to memorize and you need to write. Remember from the video, write. Apparently he didn't know how to write, but he's a merchant. So I'm like, but I wasn't there, so we'll just go with what they say, okay? So he has to memorize and he has to write, and he spends the next 22 years transcribing the Quran. I don't know how big the Quran is. I assume it looks like a book, like a volume, okay? But that's what he does for the next 22 years. The main message of the Quran is this: there is one God who made all things, to whom all people must submit, and there will be a day of judgment in which all humans will be judged according to their deeds, both good and evil. Now, we would look at that and go, okay, I see that. Let me just warn you, you can read that 2 different ways, okay? That's all I'm going to say. We're going to go on. During this time of ages 40 to 59, there is trouble in Mecca because he tells people, hey, there's one God, y'all have to submit, and there's judgment, and your deeds are going to be weighed, okay? That's because of his message, there's trouble. Because of the Kaaba and all the deities, that message didn't go with that. And they told us on the video that it was a very corrupt place. So this is gonna cause problems, but there are people that believe him, so he has disciple growth. Eventually though, he's run out of town. She spent more time on that, and that was the whole, the spider web and the bird's nest. He ends up moving to Medina, which is Portugal, and this is known as the Hegira. Now, while he's there, what he involves himself in, and his disciples involve themselves in, is to raid, like, Leif Erikson was what?
Not a Viking.
Thank you. Like the Vikings. All I got was pirate. Okay. The Viking. Thank you. Raid, like Vikings. You could say pirates too. Conquest. So you raid, you go in and take and convert. And it's not like all you have to say is there's one. There's no God. Oh, there's one God, and all is His name. But it's like, if you don't say this, we will kill you. This is how they converted people. Was you choose to become a Muslim or you die. And we're going to take all your money, and we're going to take all your women, and we're going to take all your stuff. That is how he lived while he's away. And he's amassing great wealth. He's amassing a lot of stuff, and he is amassing a lot of converts because it's scary, okay? Nobody really wants to die, and if you say, I can say there's one God, all is His name, and I can think something else, but I mean, we're talking life and death here. So this is how it grows. So at age 59, he goes back to Mecca, and I know she talked about they were afraid of him. Well, yes, they were afraid of him because he has a whole army. And what might have seemed like a simple, humble message has turned into a weaponized, I just lost the word, murderer, okay? A man who is not going to give you the option and say, hey, just so you know, there's one God, there's going to be a final judgment, your deeds are going to be weighed. It's more like, there's one God, you either believe him now or you die now. Okay, it's a little bit different. And his life is rated R with all the stuff that he amassed, so there's a lot of bloodshed, there's a lot of women involved, and there's a lot of probably, let's just go with free-for-all. Because if Muhammad is doing it, and he's their main prophet, then his disciples can do it, okay? So when he comes back at 59, captures Mecca very easily, they're afraid. He cleanses the Kaaba, and he makes it Islam's most holy place it is today. He continues his raids, his conquest, and his converts practice. That is how Muslim ideas took root. And even in the writings of Teddy Roosevelt, the president, before he was a president, he was part of the Rough Riders. He talks about Muslims and Islam coming to a place, and he says specifically, you have to be ready to fight them to the death. Otherwise, they just come in and take, like, it's not a peaceful thing. You don't negotiate. And he said it better in his words, but he talks about it. So at 62, he dies. And then from ever on, there is successor trouble. Successor is who takes over. Normally with a king, your son takes over, or some relative. People would get killed, murdered actually. So family members got murdered, and there were probably a lot of sons to choose from because there were a lot of women involved. Okay, you get my drift a little bit. But also there were people who followed him devotedly, and so it was like with Caesar. You have political, or people who know all the beliefs, and are firmly rooted in that. And then you have family, and they just fight like who's going to be in charge. All right. And over the next 100 years, his successors, whoever it is, they militarily take over most of where they are today. And statistically, they are in 25% of the world. There is a concentration in the Middle East, obviously. But that's Muhammad, okay? So now when we go back and we look at his message, there's one God who made all things, to whom all people must submit, and there will be a day of judgment in which all humans will be judged according to their deeds, both good and evil. You don't necessarily hear it as a kind thing. Okay, it's a little scary, and it should be. All right, but now we need to talk about jihad. This is the sixth pillar, and it comes up here because it is a required behavior of Muslims. They have to do jihad, and it really comes down to the question, is it Islam is a peaceful religion that has been hijacked by violence? So did Islam start as a peaceful religion and it was hijacked by some violent crazies? Or is Islam a violent religion that has been hijacked by peaceful people? These are our choices. So first of all, we're going to define jihad. It just means struggle. That's all the word means. Just like Allah means God, Islam means submission, jihad means struggle. Okay? It's not necessarily defined well just knowing the definition. We have to search further. Because then, well, is it a personal struggle to discipline myself or defend myself if somebody tries to kill me? Could I call that jihad if I was a Muslim? Because, you just want to be a better Muslim. I just need to discipline myself and act, do good deeds. And how many of us do that every New Year's? It's like, I want to be a better person. Okay, so we get that. And if somebody came in here and they had a gun and they were going to attack us, we would want the right to defend ourselves, right? Other than running and hiding, you just want to be able to fight if that's an option. You don't just want to be killed. That's one idea of struggle. Or is the struggle a conquest of non-believing nations? Now, where would this come from? Well, Muhammad believed that everyone is born a Muslim. So Adam, Eve, they were all Muslims. Everybody ever born is a Muslim. But you forget, or you're influenced by where you live, so you need to be converted. Everyone needs to be converted, because only by being a Muslim can you go to heaven. So if we're all Muslims and we forget, and the only way to make sure that I go to heaven is by conversion, then Muslims would probably do anything. The idea is you would do anything to make sure someone would go to heaven. Nobody, just think about this logically. Would you send anybody to hell? No, you wouldn't. I mean, to what extent would you go to keep them from hell? Now, it's really hard to imagine, but if you know there's a real place of judgment, you'd be surprised at what you would be willing to do to make sure that they go to heaven. Okay? So, this is our struggle to figure out what struggle means. Is it personal discipline or defending myself? Or is it the other one, I've got to convert you because I got to make sure you go to heaven? Let's find out. Well, what's the evidence? The only way that we can figure it out, I tried Google searching this a couple years ago, just some general questions, and it was like, you can't find anything out with a Google search. Everything is like shrouded in mystery. So you have to go to their sources of authority, which are the Quran, Hadith, literature, and Sunnah. Now, I know I said they believe in the Gospels, they believe in the Torah, they believe in the prophets, but remember, Muhammad and these 3 books trump everything else. So these are the final say on what struggle is. So what's in the Quran? The literal words of the law. This was given by Gabriel from Allah. So Allah tells Gabriel, Gabriel tells Muhammad. And the Quran, actually another copy, exists in heaven. And within the Quran, there are 164 verses about violent jihad, the second type. You must convert people at all costs. Okay? Then within Hadith literature, these are all the written traditions of what Muhammad said, did, or approved of. There are massive volumes because people just wrote down, Muslims, specific Muslims, wrote down everything he said and everything he did. They didn't black out the questionable stuff. They just wrote it all down. These are massive volumes. Think like encyclopedias, if you even know what those are anymore, or multiple dictionaries lined up. They're huge. They are the practical applications of the broad principles in the Quran. And there is a book entitled The Book of Jihad. It is a whole book on what they mean by jihad. And it is, I'm sure it has some personal discipline in it, but it is mostly about converting people and violence. Okay? And then Sunnah is another book. This is the life example of Muhammad. It's a biography that they wrote 100 years after he was dead. Okay? Which I find information. But you take what Hadith literature is, so you take what the book of Jihad says, and then you go, okay, well, how did Muhammad do that? And that's what the Sunnah is. Well, he did his jihad by raids and conquest and converts to the point of death. Like, that's the choice. You either live or you don't. Now, today, I might not kill you. If you give me all your money, maybe I'll let you live for a week. There's also that too. And that's part of Sharia law, and that still goes on today in that 25% of the world where it is not checked. And when I say it's rated R, it's rated R for those reasons. There was a girl, and I'm going to get the country wrong, but she's a Muslim, and her little veil covering was slightly askew. She's been in the news, if you've seen the news at all. I don't watch a lot, but see certain stories. And she was arrested because her veil was slightly askew. And we think, okay, well, that's weird. You pay your fine to get out. No, they beat her to death because her veil was slightly askew. And they kept it under wraps, but that's part of that violence that is an underlying current in this religion that has been taken over by peace-loving people. I know, Daniel, you went to Minnesota, you told me, and you ate with a family of Muslims.
It was just a bunch of men from the mosque. It wasn't a family.
Okay. But they are they don't carry daggers or guns. They're for the most part, you meet one on the street, for the most part, they are very loving, they are kind, they are truthful. They're the kind of people you want to hang out with because you can trust them easily. And they're very hospitable. But their religion is really not that way. And it makes me want to cross my eyes. Anyway, let's go on. So, yes, ma'am.
Is that okay? So I knew that something had happened. I didn't really like do that much like looking into it. But is that why all the women in, I don't remember where it was at either, but that's why all of them were like taking off their and like
There's been
protesting
riots, yeah.
because she was beaten to death.
Yeah, that's what's going on. And the government kept it under wraps, because usually they do that without everybody knowing, but somehow it got out. And so now there have been these riots, and you will, I don't know if you see a lot of it, but man, when the police come out, like there's fervor in their brutality. There is no respect for having a different opinion. So yes, this is not a good picture, but this is kind of how it goes. So when you think of Islam, it is very hierarchical, okay? So Allah talked to Gabriel and told Gabriel what to tell Muhammad and the prophets, okay? And Muhammad gets the capital letters because of all the prophets, he's the most important. So it goes, whatever was written in the Quran, Allah tells Gabriel, Gabriel tells Muhammad. Now, this is right about here, you're gonna go, what the heck are you talking about with the Islamic State and the Ummah? The Ummah is kind of like what we would call church. It is just the worldwide community of Muslims, okay? There's Muslims everywhere, but whenever they leave their country and they come to the United States, they always find a group of Muslims and they live close to them because those Muslims know how they were raised. There's camaraderie, okay? So if you guys moved to China and you found out there were Iowans in China, you would go make friends with them. But that's just the idea. It's not a church building, it's just the worldwide community of Muslims. There's also this thing called the Islamic State. This is known as a theocracy. This is government. Now, from Muhammad, most of that 25% of where Muslims are goes from Muhammad to the Ummah, where there's just groups of Muslims and they do life together. But there are places within that 25% where the Islamic State is the political government of that area. That's called a theocracy. Okay? It's a little bit, it's scarier if you live in a place where the Islamic State is. But these are the two big groups. So Muhammad speaks to these. Then, within the Ummah and within the Islamic State, there are community leaders who tell the men things, the men tell the women things, and the women tell the children things. And if a small child of 5 has a question, he does not go to a community leader. He goes to his mother, who goes to his father, who goes to the community leader. If it's one of those questions that mom can't answer. Now, we do this in our families. If you guys had a question when you were little, you would usually go to your parents. That's not weird, okay? But that child is forbidden to go straight to a community leader and ask the question. He must go through this channel. Because Allah is at the top, that's where we would put God. Then there's angels, then there's Muhammad, then there's all the people. And then from all the people, they're divided into, I don't want to say who's better, but who's more important. There is a hierarchy here. Community leaders, those who have studied. Then there's men. So, luck of the draw, okay? Then there's women, and then there's children. Submission. Do you see the submission? Okay, and this is just how it goes. Now, I tried, it's up to you if you want to try and do this. I was trying to draw this last night because I do like pictures. And with Christianity, we had God up here. We had Jesus, direct line. Man was here, okay? And all the stuff from your picture was there, and there's a possibility of life with God if you believe in Jesus, or if you don't believe in Jesus, there's hell, okay? Very, very, very simple thing, okay? Simplistic version of this, sorry. So with Islam, we have Allah up here. And I'm going to give Allah eyes because it helps. And he's got angry eyes, okay? Because he's about the rules, and he's weighing good deeds and bad deeds, and he decides who gets in, and he's temperamental, okay? You just don't know what kind of mood he's going to be in, so you want to make him happy, okay? Under him is Gabriel, right? And the Quran, okay? And then there's just kind of this line within Christianity, and remember, Christianity is a religion, but it's also a worldview. Islam is a worldview and a religion. I am talking about the religion, but it's based on the worldview. There's this cap to heaven. Over here, there's not a cap to heaven. God wants people to come to heaven. He created them. He wants them back. Okay, but in Islam, there's this cap. And Adam was created, but he was kind of, sorry, got my box here. He's kind of like sent here. This is supposed to be an elevator. It's best I can do. Okay? He was sent here, and Allah just doesn't have a lot to do with him. Okay? But his life affects everybody around him. They believe that Adam and Eve sinned, but they also believe that they were quickly forgiven, and it was like act right. Act right. I'll forgive you. You know, if you've ever talked to somebody, like, just do the right thing, okay? I forgive you, just do the right thing, right? There were several prophets, including Moses. Same thing. They affect everybody. It's like Allah just creates them and drops them in, and it's always act right, okay? Until we get to Muhammad. So Muhammad gets to be up here, okay? Because Gabriel talks directly to him. And he gives him the Quran. And so from then on, his life and words, I guess life and actions, okay? This is like the gold standard. This is the gold standard, but once again, Allah talks to Gabriel, who talks to Muhammad. And when we finally get to death, okay, you have the option, like these are options, to go to heaven or to hell. And under the idea is no matter what the circumstance is, it's very important to go to heaven. But before you enter heaven, so there's a door here. It's a really bad door, but we're going to go here. Before you enter heaven, your deeds must be weighed. Is there a little balance thing? okay? And you want your good deeds to outweigh your bad deeds. So that's why good is down, because it weighs more, okay? You want that to be the case. It is only from here that you can even approach the door, and you might be able to go in, but you also might be cast down here, depending on what Allah says, because Allah is the supreme ruler. Not to mention all of this hierarchy, where we have community leaders, we have men, we have women, and we have children. And there's like all these degrees of people. Like children are less of a degree of people than women. And women are less of a degree than men, and men are less of a degree than the community leaders. Although you can work up to that. So, the one thing that I didn't tell you, if you want a straight ticket to heaven, regardless of what your good or bad deeds are, get you in. Even Allah says, do this and you're in. The way to do that is to die in jihad. So, if you die in the name of converting people, it's a definite shoo-in. I don't think I had that in the notes, but that will become very important. So, this is even really hard to draw, because after a while it's like, well, that doesn't make sense. But I'm like so used to this one, okay? I know this one. I have not grown up in this one. So I don't get it. I can say it and I can kind of see, but you should see discrepancies here, okay? And even with the videos, you should see that, like, wow, they believe in God. They're like so close and yet so far away. Their whole idea of God is distorted. But he looks down on all these people as vice regents, actually slaves. They are his slaves. And one other thing, and then I'll be quiet. So when men go to heaven, they have access to as many virgins as they want. When women go to heaven, they're not told what they have access to. Now, why do I even bring that up? Because that's kind of gross, okay? I only bring it up because they bring it up. Like, that's what's in heaven, is access to virgins. So, I hope you're seeing a mindset that, like, well, that's something might be a little off, okay? Because that's probably a good thought. So, tell me, in the last couple minutes, tell me what you're hearing and what you're seeing as far as Islam. And remember, the people who believe this, we know they were created in the image of God, regardless of what they believe. So they're people. All right, but what are you hearing about the worldview? Anybody want to volunteer? Or do I get call names? Yes, ma'am.
That, like, basically they're very sexist.
There's a lot. Okay, I'm sorry, but you will find that, I mean, there's sex in Christianity, okay? It has a model, it has a purpose, but the rest of them are like, there's a crazy amount of sex there. It's like, no, stop. Okay, yes, that's true. It is. It's very true. What else? What are the rest of you hearing? Rachel.
Basically the same thing.
Sometimes that does jump out, really. Once you start saying that there's this separation between men, women, and children, it's just hard not to, like, you know.
Yeah, I was not able to
Yeah.
be a woman there.
It's hard. I mean, it would be hard. It would just, but yet you grow up in that, you learn that it's like second nature. Watching the videos of that one lady who actually left when she escaped when she was betrothed to be married, like how courageous that would have been, and risky, and yet like God had to open her eyes to like think through the religion. And she even says that Muslims need to change. Muslims need to make the change, which it's fascinating. Kaylee.
I would say that Allah talking to Gabriel, and then Gabriel talking to Muhammad, and then Muhammad has the scripture, which is the Quran, and it kind of relates back to the community leaders, and then the men, and then the women and the children. So it's just interesting to see it all lined up like that.
It is good to know that that's a repeated thing, though, because that helps us go, oh yeah, yep, that's there. Eden.
I think just like learning about, like, we see like things that happen like 9/11 and other like attacks, I guess, from people who like believe in this religion, and it kind of, not like you should do it obviously, but if you believe this like so, and you grew up this, and like I was watching this thing, okay, it was like TED Talks, and it was like this guy, and he was saying how he was gonna be like a suicide like
I watched
bomber.
that too.
Yes, I watched it because it just like came up, and he was saying how like they're like beaten. Like he went to like a school, like a regular school during the day, and then at night he went to like a school like teaching them all about this. And he said they're like almost beaten until that was like engraved in them. And I think like if you really believed like you were immediately gonna go to heaven if you like died because of that, and you did a lot of bad stuff, I mean like,
who wouldn't
Yeah.
opt for that?
yeah.
Yeah.
It's just,
Fear and physical abuse can carry people a long way, but that's like a dust statement. How many people who have been physically abused or any kind of abuse, do they carry it their whole lives, and it affects them their whole lives unless it is dealt with, and it has to be dealt with systematically. You can't just say, voila, it's gone, you know. So what about you, Daniel?
Just the people, like, they're pretty like welcoming
They
Yeah.
are.
and like nice, and yeah, they were like super nice. They just gave us a bunch of food when I was with them, and like were willing to talk about things. But
Yeah.
then like, you know, what they believe is not what they like show to.
Right. There is an underlying current of stuff that is not addressed, and yet they are. This is, I think, what you see though is some of the grace of God in their hospitality. Like that's just, I don't see how it can't be the goodness of God, especially when, you know, some of the other things that they believe, like to tell the truth, to be honest, to, you know, perhaps find something that you're good at and do that. How can there not be kind people? So it is, there's this discrepancy, and it's like, it's almost like there's a ticking time bomb somewhere in there, and at some point it's either diffused or it goes off. And it's just, it's a lot for a brain. You guys have been very patient. You may go. Thank you.
thank you. Have a good weekend.
You too.